I'm Heyzeus, and in this video, we're going to be looking at Counter-Strike's newest type of skin, CHARMS. CHARMS are a massively overdue item added by the Armory, and Valve have done something super awesome by secretly giving them patterns. These patterns are really interesting, we're only just figuring out how they work, and I am going to be going over what we know about them so far. Let's get into things. Now, this video is sponsored by Skinport, the easy to use skins marketplace which is a miles better way of getting skins than opening cases. Skinport has a bonkers range of skins, 1.8 million of them, available at prices significantly less than what you'd pay on the Steam market. For example, here's a Bowie Tiger Tooth for $488 on the Steam market, and here's the same knife for $345 on Skinport. And best of all, there are no extra fees when you buy a skin. What you see is what you pay, unless you're Australian, lucky me. You can also check out every skin in detail from every angle using the 3D skin viewer, including the new CHARMS, they work as well. It's also safe and extremely reliable to use, so safe and reliable it has a 4.9 star Trustpilot rating with 27,000 reviews, so it's a great site, check it out. Link is in the description. So we're going to start with the missing link charms. Now I assume the name here is meant to imply they're the missing link in human evolution. That's kind of mean, isn't it? This guy didn't choose to be born a sausage. Wait, is this me or does this guy look like Big Ed from 90 Day Fiancé? Anyway, despite their unassuming and vaguely phallic appearance, these things have a lot of patterns. Basically, there's two types of patterns on CHARMS. There's color patterns, which are different colors, and there's texture patterns, which is where the texture is rotated over the skin based on the pattern ID. Now, these types of patterns are not new, they exist in other skins, but what is new when it comes to CHARMS is that Valve decided we apparently need 100,000 different patterns on every single charm. That's right, 100,000 different patterns. Normal skins have 1,000, but apparently that's just not enough for these things. Now, the extra patterns don't change that much in practice other than, a bigger number. The real juice is just in how far the patterns go in changing how charms look. Starting with the color patterns, a lot of the color changes are key to specific parts of the charm. For example, Little Crass's pattern only affects the bandana, and you can get pretty much any type of color as well. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and this is very common. Ava's pattern affects her vest, Big Kev?
G'day Australia, I'm Big Kev. There's nothing more Aussie than a barbecue with your family and friends. And there's nothing more Aussie than Big Kev's cleaning products.
Anyway, Big Kev's pattern affects his suit, the SAS's pattern affects their eyes, Sasquatch's pattern affects his underwear, Sandy's swimsuit completely changes colour, and the Redditor charm has the pattern affect its tongue. Some charms do take it a lot further though. For example, the Little Whisker, your friendly terrorist kitty cat, completely changes colour, and I'm not gonna lie, he looks a bit under the weather because of it, but hey, if you want a purple cat, I guess this guy is for you. The Chicken Little also looks really unhealthy in some of its patterns. I don't think chickens are meant to be blue. Then there's the That's Bananas charm, it's a banana man, but he essentially goes rotten as the pattern ID gets lower, like you end up with a rotten banana. The Pinch of Salt also completely changes colour, although this one is definitely the least weird, and finally there's the Hot Howl, which turns golden as the pattern ID increases. Now, most of these patterns are not currently getting overpaid. A lot of these charms are pretty cheap anyway, so the patterns will probably never be special. But the clear exception here is the Red Tongue Little Monster. At the time of me writing this little gets overpaid, but we'll see if it ends up staying like that. This brings me on to the really interesting charm from this collection though. The Little Teacup. The Little Teacup is one of two texture-based patterns in this collection. The other is the Dino Dog, but this one is really boring, so we're going to ignore it. And the Little Teacup has this super detailed texture with a ton of on it. And with 100,000 patterns, there are a lot of very cool, good-looking ones that are just waiting to be discovered. Currently, the best one known is the Smoke pattern. This pattern only exists at pattern ID 99,500 and higher, but it's likely just going to be a matter of time before people start finding more. There's already other potential patterns showing up, and while it's not clear exactly what's going to catch on, there's a hell of a lot of possibilities. Anyway, this brings us on to the small arms charms. Now, the patterns on these charms are a lot more impactful than the missing link charms, and they're having much bigger impacts on prices as well. Now, when it comes to the blue charms, that's their grade, by the way, not their literal color, they're not very interesting. The one that does stand out to me is the stitch loaded. It varies in color a lot depending on the pattern, but it doesn't vary that much in price, so don't get too excited about it. But the purple tier charms are a very different story. The hot hands charm, for example, goes from pink to orange depending on the pattern, and orange charms are worth more, 20 cents more, yippee. The Disco Mac covers a much larger spectrum of colors, and the blue and purple colors at each end of the pattern ID range get 100% overpay, which is pretty significant. Well, it's actually only about $1.50, but still, 100% overpay. The pop art only has part of the muzzle change color. Purple pattern is 30 cents more expensive though, so I guess that's a win. The Glamour Shot goes from red to blue. The red pattern is very valuable, 3 times as much as all the others, but they're also very rare. They only start at about pattern 5,000 or less, so only 1 in 20 Glamour Shots will be this pattern. But things really start to heat up with the die-cast AK. So basically the pattern on this thing makes it completely change color, like completely. It starts off at gold and goes all the way to blue. Now, this may seem pretty simple, but in actual fact, this charm is really kind of because there are a bunch of secret patterns within patterns that are worth a hell of a lot extra. I'm gonna go off Tea with Milk and Sugar's guide here. This is currently the most authoritative source we have, and basically, anything from pattern 0 to 15,000 is a gold, but anything below pattern 5,000 gets a ton of extra overpay. There's also a secret red pattern buried inside the pink pattern that's worth even more, and while normal blue patterns are cheap, extremely blue patterns, so skins with the highest pattern IDs possible, also get a ton of overpay. The Titanium Orb also does something pretty similar. It has a bunch of patterns ranging from gold to purple, and they're mostly the same price, but at the very ends of the spectrum, so below pattern 5,000 or above pattern 95,000, prices suddenly go up dramatically. It's basically a rare pattern within a pattern. And when it comes to the semi-precious, things get even more expensive. The charm comes in green, blue, and purple. Purple is slightly more expensive normally, but at extremely high and low pattern values, that overpay absolutely skyrockets. There's a huge premium on getting the lowest or highest pattern IDs possible, and because of how many pattern IDs there are, you can end up with some very, very high-end patterns. Now, the final 2 charms are the Baby Cara C and CT, but they're really not as interesting. Basically, as the ID gets higher, they get more and more gold. People will overpay a lot for very, very high IDs, but it's not exactly what you'd call a complicated pattern. Now, people have been speculating about charms, or keychains as they used to be called, for about 7 years now. They've been a long time coming, and now that they're here, I think they're a really awesome thing for the community. Firstly, we just haven't had that many good pattern-based skins recently. And by recently, I mean for like 5 years now, maybe more. There just hasn't been that much interesting stuff with patterns added. And patterns are a really interesting component of skins. Like really expensive rare patterns create a lot of interest. Just think about blue gems. And this is something Valve have really neglected for a long time now. Most of the famous rare patterns are really, really old. So getting a bunch of rare patterns just on its own like this is really cool. But it's especially cool in this case because this is a completely new system of patterns, and the community has basically had to start from pretty much nothing in trying to figure out how they work. In fact, even during the couple of days I took to make this video, new things have been discovered. Like some of those missing link charms I mentioned earlier, well, there is actually a market for really high and low end patterns. This is stuff people are only just starting to figure out and properly document, and that's actually pretty cool in its own right. We just haven't had that much mystery about skins for a while now, and charms are finally providing some mystery, and I think that makes things a whole lot more interesting. So I'm really happy Valve have finally given us charms, and given there's currently only 2 collections, I think there's room for a whole bunch more to be added. I don't know why we had to wait like 7 years for Valve to finally add them, but now that they're here, I'm really happy about it. Anyway, that's pretty much it for this video. If you've enjoyed it, please like, comment, and subscribe, massively appreciated. Otherwise, trust the numbers, not your guts. I'm Heyzeus, thanks for watching, see ya.